Amalo was a village unlike any other. Its residents lived in harmony, bound by a sense of community that was unbreakable. Children played freely in the open fields, elders sat in the village square sharing stories, and everyone knew each other's names and faces. It was a place where one could feel the warmth of friendship and the strength of unity. One day, a new resident moved into Amalo. She was a young and beautiful woman, whose name was Adaeze. Her arrival stirred curiosity among the villagers. Adaeze was strikingly beautiful, with skin as smooth as silk and eyes that sparkled like the morning dew. Her presence was impossible to ignore, yet she kept to herself, never engaging with the villagers. She moved into a small hut at the edge of the village, close to the forest. From the first day, Adaeze's routine was peculiar. She rarely left her hut during the day, only venturing out to the market for supplies. When she did, she moved quickly, avoiding any prolonged interaction with the villagers. At night, the villagers began to hear a rhythmic pounding sound coming from her hut. Initially, they assumed she preferred to cook at night, as the aroma of delicious soup often wafted through the air. Months passed, and Adaeze remained a mystery. The villagers gossiped about her incessantly. Why does she stay indoors all the time? Why does she never speak to anyone? I heard she's hiding something, one woman whispered to another as they fetched water from the stream. Despite their curiosity, the villagers were kind and respectful, never intruding on Adaeze's privacy. The men of the village, intrigued by her beauty, made several attempts to get close to her, but she rebuffed all their advances. Amalo's harmony remained unbroken, but Adaeze's presence had introduced a subtle tension. The villagers' curiosity grew with each passing day, and the mystery of the nightly pounding from her hut added to their intrigue. Little did they know that their quiet village was on the brink of a dark and horrifying discovery. As the months went by, the villagers' initial curiosity about Adaeze turned into suspicion. The nightly pounding had stopped abruptly, and Adaeze's behavior became even more reclusive. She no longer went to the market as frequently, and when she did, she moved even more swiftly and avoided all contact. Around the same time, disturbing news began to reach Amalo. Reports of missing newborns from a nearby village spread like wildfire. Panic set in among the villagers, especially those expecting children. Pregnant women and new mothers were advised to be extremely cautious, and the village elders held a meeting to discuss the situation. During the meeting, Okeke, a respected elder, voiced the concerns that were on everyone's minds. "We must be vigilant," he said gravely. "We don't know who or what is behind these disappearances, but we must protect our children." The villagers agreed and established a night watch to guard against any potential threats. However, the suspicion towards Adaeze grew stronger. The timing of the missing children and the cessation of the pounding sounds from her hut seemed too coincidental to ignore. One evening, after a particularly tense day of speculation, the villagers gathered at the village square to discuss their concerns. Chika, a young mother expecting her second child, spoke up. "I'm scared," she confessed. "What if our village is next? What if it's not safe here anymore?" The elders reassured her, but the unease was palpable. Meanwhile, Adaeze remained a subject of intense gossip. Yuzo, one of the village's most persistent bachelors, tried once more to engage her as she passed by his stall at the market. "Adaeze, would you like to join me for a walk?" he asked, putting on his most charming smile. Adaeze barely glanced at him. "No, thank you," she replied curtly and hurried away. Yuzo sighed, watching her retreating figure. "There's something strange about that woman," he muttered to himself. That night, the village square buzzed with the same sentiment. Many shared their stories of rejected advances and mysterious behavior. Even the most level-headed villagers couldn't ignore the growing sense of unease. Amalo was no longer the peaceful village it once was. Fear and suspicion hung in the air like a dark cloud. The village elders decided that something had to be done about Adaeze, but they needed proof before taking any drastic action. That night, as the villagers gathered in the square to discuss their next steps, Obi, a young and curious man, stepped forward. He had long been intrigued by Adaeze and had once attempted to court her, only to be turned away. Obi suggested that he would visit Adaeze's hut under the pretext of seeking her company and investigate further. With the villagers' agreement, Obi set off towards Adaeze's hut. He approached cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. The hut was dark and silent, but as he got closer, he noticed a faint light flickering inside. Gathering his courage, he knocked on the door. "Adaeze," he called out softly. There was no response. Obi knocked again, harder this time. The door creaked open slightly, and he pushed it further, stepping inside. The interior was dimly lit by a small oil lamp. The hut was neat and orderly, but something caught Obi's eye, a piece of baby clothing lying in the corner. Obi's heart raced. He quickly picked up the tiny garment and examined it. It was stained with dirt and a small spot of blood. Panic set in as he realized the significance of his discovery. He needed to alert the villagers immediately. Obi left the hut as quietly as he had entered and sprinted back to the village square. Bursting into the meeting, he held up the baby clothing. "I found this in Adaeze's hut," he announced breathlessly. The villagers gasped in shock. The elders examined the garment, confirming it belonged to the missing baby. The evidence was undeniable. The village square erupted in chaos. Chika, her face pale, clutched her swollen belly protectively. "We need to confront her now," she cried. Okeke, maintaining his composure, raised his hand to silence the crowd. "We must be cautious," he said. "We don't know what she might do if cornered." Elder Namdi nodded in agreement. "We should wait until nightfall when we can catch her in the act." Obi, still holding the garment, stepped forward again. "I'll go back tonight," he volunteered. "If I can catch her in the act, we'll have all the proof we need." The villagers agreed, though many were uneasy. As night fell, they huddled together in small groups, whispering prayers and holding their children close. Obi prepared for his risky mission, his determination steeled by the need to protect his village. The next day, the village elders held a meeting to decide on the next course of action. They concluded that they would confront Adaeze that night. The villagers would hide around her hut, and as soon as they heard the pounding sound again, they would rush in and apprehend her. As night fell, the villagers took their positions, hidden in the shadows around Adaeze's hut. Hours passed in tense silence. Then, just as they were about to give up, they heard it, the unmistakable sound of pounding coming from Adaeze's hut. The villagers sprang into action. They rushed towards the hut, bursting through the door. Inside, they found Adaeze in the midst of a ritual, pounding away at a wooden mortar. The room was filled with strange symbols and artifacts, and the air was thick with the scent of herbs and spices. Adaeze looked up in shock as the villagers stormed in. She tried to flee, but they quickly subdued her. Okeke, the elder, stepped forward and demanded an explanation. "Why have you been stealing our children?" he thundered. Adaeze, realizing there was no escape, fell to her knees and began to weep. "I had no choice," she confessed. "I am not what I seem. I am much older than I appear. I have lived for over a century, sustained by dark magic and the sacrifice of innocent children." The villagers recoiled in horror as Adaeze continued. "When I moved here, I thought I could find peace. But the dark magic required more sacrifices to maintain my youth and beauty. I took the babies from the nearby village, but when there were no more, I had to take one from here." The villagers were outraged. They dragged Adaeze out of her hut and into the village square. There, in the presence of the entire community, Adaeze was judged for her crimes. The anger and betrayal felt by the villagers left no room for forgiveness. In a fit of righteous fury, they decided on a fitting punishment. The next morning, the village square was filled with villagers eager for justice. They had gathered wood and built a large pyre in the center. Adaeze, bound and gagged, was brought before the crowd. Elder Namdi addressed the assembly. "Adaeze has confessed to her crimes. She has stolen our children and used dark magic to sustain herself. For this, she must be punished." The villagers, their faces grim and resolute, murmured in agreement. They watched in silence as Adaeze was tied to the pyre. Okeke stepped forward with a torch, his expression one of sorrow and determination. "May the spirits forgive us for what we must do," he said, then set the pyre alight. As the flames rose, Adaeze screamed in agony, her cries echoing through the village. The villagers watched with a mix of horror and relief as the fire consumed her. The night was filled with the sound of crackling flames and the distant wails of the condemned woman. When the fire finally died down, all that remained of Adaeze were ashes. The villagers, still shaken by the events, dispersed quietly to their homes. The darkness of the night seemed to weigh heavily on them, but there was also a sense of closure. The morning after Adaeze's execution was quiet. The usual hustle and bustle of the village seemed subdued as everyone processed the events of the previous night. The air was thick with a somber mood, but there was also a sense of relief that the danger had been dealt with. The village elders gathered once more in the square to discuss how to help the community heal from the trauma. Elder Okeke spoke first. "We have faced a great evil and overcome it, but we must not let fear and suspicion rule us. We need to rebuild our trust and support one another." Chika, holding her newborn baby tightly, stood up and addressed the crowd. "We must also remember those who were taken. Let us honor their memory and ensure that such darkness never befalls our village again." The villagers nodded in agreement. It was decided that a memorial would be built in the village square to honor the missing children and remind everyone of the importance of vigilance and community. As days turned into weeks, life in Amalo began to return to normal. The villagers worked together to rebuild the sense of community that had been shaken. They held regular meetings to discuss the safety and well-being of everyone, especially the children. One day, Obi, who had been instrumental in uncovering Adaeze's dark secret, approached Chika. "How are you holding up?" he asked gently. Chika smiled weakly. "It's been hard, but we're healing. Thank you for your bravery, Obi. Without you, we might never have known the truth." Obi nodded, feeling a mix of pride and humility. We all did our part. We must always look out for one another. As the village continued to heal, the elders organized a festival to celebrate the strength and unity of Amalo. It was a time for laughter, dancing, and storytelling, a way to remind everyone of the village's resilient spirit. On the night of the festival, the village square was filled with the sounds of drums and laughter. Elders told stories of bravery and wisdom, children played games, and families shared food and drink. Elder Namdi, watching the festivities, felt a sense of pride. "We have faced a great trial, but we have come out stronger," he said to Okeke, who stood beside him. Indeed, Okeke agreed. And let us always remember that it is our unity and love for one another that will keep us safe. The festival continued late into the night, with villagers dancing under the stars, their hearts lighter than they had been in months. The memory of Adaeze and the darkness she brought would not be forgotten, but neither would the strength and resilience of Amalo. As the last of the villagers made their way home, the elders stood in the square, looking at the newly erected memorial. It was a simple stone monument, engraved with the names of the missing children and a promise, "Never again shall we let darkness take root in our hearts." And so, Amalo continued to thrive, a village united by love, trust, and the shared belief that together, they could overcome any challenge.